Let's get right into it. And for this, I'd like to bring on Timour to tell you about the world of new pop-up cities, focusing on Ed City. So please give Timour a big round of applause.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
This is going to be super fun because I feel like this is the first time we're actually covering this thing as a big topic, because I think the time is now that it's big enough that everybody knows about it. A lot of you may have heard of Zuzalu, other pop-up cities, network states, and we're kind of seeing a lot of creativity around how we can innovate in the physical world. And we're going to do certain things out of order. So my first question to you is, well, how was Ed City Lana?
Yeah, it was incredible, honestly. I feel very energized, which is actually kind of a new thing. The first couple of times we did this, we honestly burnt out pretty hard. But this time it feels like things are really falling into place. We built a playbook. We open sourced it. Our whole team's on board. So that feels very gratifying to feel like, okay, we're making progress. We're actually making these things sustainable. It's the third event we've done in a row that was break even, so that feels good as well. And yeah, so it's great to be here.
Awesome. Well, and let's do the actual question. What is Ed City, Lana? And tell us about what you've been working on.
Yeah, so at Edge City, we convene people in what we call pop-up villages or pop-up cities. It's essentially 500 to 1,000 people living together for a month. And it's a place for experimentation with new ideas about society, community building, technology. I think of it practically, and I think this is most relevant to folks here, as an actual practical place where you can experiment with the technologies that you've been building in an environment where people can actually get to know it, can actually use it IRL. And we focus a lot at Edge City in particular on being multidisciplinary. So although we come from the Ethereum space, we also put in a lot of effort to bring folks from AI, from biotech, from other frontier fields, as well as not just tech and science, but philosophy, governance, government officials, and things like that. So that's the core idea of what we're doing with these pop-up cities, and I very much see them as almost like a proto version or like a first initial version of some of these ideas that have started to gain a lot of traction recently around network states, network societies, and eventually I think a lot of the things that we build in these environments can also go on to impact current cities as well.
Actually, there's a few new terms that I hadn't heard before, so I want to dig into that. But maybe a meta question is, what got you excited about this, and why did you choose to make this effectively a company that does this thing for a lot of places in different parts of the world?
Yeah, so personally, I was lucky enough to attend an event called Zuzalu, which happened only a year and a half ago, which is quite surreal. Zuzalu came out of a small group of folks, including Vitalik and Janine, my co-founder at Edge City. And the idea was that, again, a lot of folks have been talking about these ideas of network states, and Vitalik was like, why don't we just try it? Let's just actually try an experiment. 2 months in Montenegro. We had 200 people living there full time. We had 1,000 visitors come throughout those 2 months. And I organized the AI track there. I ended up getting more involved in the core organization as well. And I just personally had a very meaningful experience. It felt like an environment where multiple sides of my personality could kind of manifest themselves. There was obviously the intellectual side. I was learning a lot about crypto, about Ethereum, about AI. But it was also a very fun, playful environment. I was doing cold plunges with David Hoffman. I was learning about longevity. I was randomly got a chance to DJ with Grimes, and so that's not going to happen at every one of these. But it's a very kind of diverse environment that, to me, approximates what life can and maybe should feel like, at least for a month or two per year. So that's how I got into it. Zuzalu, we ended up decentralizing the concept, encouraging a lot of folks to try similar experiments, and out of that process, Edge City was born.
Amazing. And Lana was just the latest iteration, but you've done a few of these to get to here. Give us a overview of like what the past versions have been, and are they thematic? Where are they? How long have they been? And kind of how has your thinking evolved around how to make a pop-up city?
Yeah, so we are very much in the experimentation stage right now. This time last year, we did an event called ZooConnect. That was, again, primarily with the Zuzalu community. That was in the middle of Istanbul. So we went from a resort in Montenegro, a beachside resort, to just like middle of the city. Very different experiences that definitely influenced the way that we think about these things. And then with Edge City, we've done Edge City Denver, which happened during ETH Denver this year. It's crazy. And then we did Edge Esmeralda in California. So that was in a town called Healdsburg, an hour north of SF. It was the idea was like, okay, we've done beachside resort completely removed from everything. We've done huge urban center. Let's try a small, comfortable, walkable town. And that's the model that we're feeling really good around. That event in Healdsburg was very special. It was like over 1,000 people. It was maybe less than actually 50% crypto. So we had a lot of folks coming who were in AI, in biotech, a lot of folks coming up from the Bay. We had the Burning Man organization there. We had just a lot of incredible things. And one thing that made that particular event special was that it was in partnership with a new town project called Esmeralda. That's now probably one of the more exciting new city projects in the US. And the creator of that project said that the event that Edge City did accelerated it by probably 3 to 4 years, which was very gratifying to hear and gives us a sense that, okay, there's something really special here where we can bring a ton of energy and excitement and interest to an area. And the reason that it was so effective was that it actually gave us a chance to almost like LARP as what it will feel like to live in this new town, which right now is just, plain land. And we hosted it in the nearest viable town. But it gave people a sense of, okay, this is what life will feel like in Esmeralda. And we had, things happening. We had decentralized identity systems and, crypto payments and all this stuff. So that's been the story thus far. Edge City Lana just happened in Chiang Mai. Again, incredible, just finished a few days ago. And in the interim, we also incubated an idea called Crecimiento, which has now taken on a life of its own. It's a big crypto movement happening in Argentina currently. That came out of an idea out of Edge City Denver, from the sauna in Edge City Denver. And then folks like Juan Benet and others kind of ran with it, and they did their first pop-up city in August, and they're now doing their second in December. So that's been the short timeline.
Wow. So you're always effectively on the road trying to pop up a new city somewhere.
I'm actually in New York for like 9 months of the year.
It's the most counterintuitive thing I expected.
Yeah, exactly.
Amazing. Maybe just as a quick survey, who has attended one of these events, whether it's Ed City or Zuzalu in any other part of the world? Okay, this is actually great. I wanted to see less hands. So here's my personal question. How do the logistics of something like this work? When I hear this thing, I imagine you got a whole empty kind of ground being turned into a pop-up city, and that's where my imagination stops. What happens after? Do we have new laws? Do we have new money? Do we elect somebody as a leader every week? Do we have internet? Tell us about what actually happens when you get there.
Yeah, totally. So we use a lot of existing infrastructure, right? I think in some ways the term pop-up city is maybe a little bit not helpful, but it's essentially we go to generally a new place, and then we find venues that are suitable for our needs, and we try to kind of create a village-like feeling. So there's maybe 10 to 12 different venues within a 5-10 minute walk. There are hotels, Airbnbs, houses where people stay. There's a place for people to have shared meals. There's a co-working space that's generally the hub of the experience. And then every location has its own flow. So people generally, they get up, they go have a healthy breakfast, they go to a workout, there's lectures, there's time for deep work. And then in the evenings, you can go have dinner and then social time. So it's very similar to, I think, what you would...
College campus for adults.
College campus, adjacent, 100%. it's very similar to what I think you would imagine if you just, if you're like, oh, let's go live in a nice town for a month. But the cool thing about it is that we fill these villages with curious, kind, high agency people, generally people building something really interesting in the world. And so because everyone is removed from their usual context, everyone's in a state of mind of being interested to innovate and experiment and talk about new ideas and learn from each other. So yeah, that's to give you a sense of the actual experience.
It's amazing. And you also kind of talked about there are a lot of workshops and educational pieces. How are those structured, or how do you decide what to focus on?
Yeah, so we have two main buckets there. So for the programming, the general overarching thesis is that we do not want to be centrally planning most of that, meaning it's essentially a long series of unconferences based on topics that we find interesting and that folks essentially volunteer to lead. So just to give some examples, at Edge City Lana, we had, and to be clear, we do stack the deck ahead of time. We do work with experts to say, hey, do you want to lead a track in XYZ? But I'd say still 80% of the content is actually just co-created by the community. So to give some examples, at Edge City Lana, we had Justin Drake from Ethereum run a sequencing week. We had Tim Bako and Venkatesh Rao run a series on protocols as a concept, as a new field of study. But we also had, people showing up and saying, hey, I'm actually a teacher and I've been working at, this interesting kind of new education system school in Switzerland. I'd be very happy to run a track on that, or at least do some workshops. So about 80% of the content that's actually on the calendar, on the shared calendar, is co-created by the community members themselves. We have nothing to do with it. Another 15 to 20% is things that we kind of help to pre-plan. But again, there we really leave it up to the experts to create
awesome.
those. Yeah.
And maybe to understand what happens after the city ends, what kind of are the expectations for the attendees, and kind of do you see them come back? What do you kind of expect for them? What's kind of a good way of thinking about the impact?
Yeah, so a few things. One, people definitely have been coming back, which is very cool to see. We've been getting a lot of positive feedback. It feels like we've hit PMF with this particular type of gathering. So that's great. In between, there are meetups around the world. There are, there's a bit of a digital community, but we're very focused on the IRL component, so we haven't pushed too hard into that. That's definitely an area where we need to kind of cultivate that more. But yeah, for now, it's essentially, we're very early in these stages, so we're in the kind of movement building phase. We're still figuring out what's happening here. So
But there's no expectation that they must do something after.
No. There's no expectation. Yeah, I guess prep for the next one. Yeah,
That's absolutely fair. We kind of see that with people coming back to hackathons. They're just 2 days instead of 2 months. I do want to tie this back into the crypto side of things. One interesting pattern, obviously, here is that you have a very interesting collection of attendees. There are people who are interested in very specific topics. All of them are founders, builders, not the general distribution you expect when you're living in a city or anywhere else. How's that influence kind of your decision making, or kind of what you think they get to do? And maybe kind of relatedly, how do you think that actually has helped anywhere from make our ecosystem better, or just overall actually make Ethereum more interesting to people?
Yeah, totally. So let me touch on the builder side first. We've had a number of amazing teams come through the doors. Projects like Dymo, Zupass, which is now being used all over DevCon, a team called Cursive that's been with us from the beginning, and they have these amazing NFC chips, and there's programmable cryptography on them to allow people to connect. We had the ZK email team with us this time. So we genuinely want to be a place for actual experimentation. And the cool thing is that if you're a builder, you have, 300 to 1,000 people there ready and excited and willing to use your product. And that's just a really cool thing to be able to get that kind of live feedback. And it's especially cool if builders come to multiple of the villages, because they can use the interim time to say, okay, that was amazing. How can we adjust? Maybe how can we slightly pivot? And then, 3 months later, they have another chance to get in the weeds with potential users and customers. So this time around at Lana, we did something new that we haven't tried before, but we liked it a lot. We called it Residencies. It's essentially what it sounds like, but we had, of the 300 people that lived there full time, there was about 1,000 people in total through the month, but 300 lived there full time. Of those, about 75 were part of a residency. So to give an example, there was a residency called the Decertification Technology Residency, which was run by Althea from the Ethereum Foundation. And the idea is it's like 30 incredible programmable cryptography engineers building technology that's actually good for humans rather than extractive from our time, attention, and just human values. And so they had, they were able to focus and actually build the things they were building. So that's teams like Cursive, ZK P2P, ZK Email. But then every Thursday they had a demo night where they would be able to demo to all of the people at the city, or of course they can integrate into the city as much as they want. If Vitalik's doing a talk, they can obviously go to that, attend, use that to get inspired. And this format worked really, really well. And so I could imagine, for example, like a ETH Global residency for a month, where it's like, hey, to all of the, winners or runners up or whatever of prior hackathons, if you want to go somewhere and live for a month and actually have the chance to really go deep on the project you've been building, this could be a cool opportunity for that. So that kind of thing, I think offering builders new opportunities to go deeper is really interesting. And to touch on Ethereum, so we have come out of the Ethereum ecosystem. We're incredibly values aligned. We are always thinking about how do we give back. And the two things that we've discussed with folks at Ethereum is, one, just being a bridge to other frontier industries, which is something that I think the ecosystem is very interested in. So to use the tools that we're building here and see how that's applicable in AI, in biotech, in frontier fields like that. And then two, to just continue to be a place where builders can come and experiment and actually try their products IRL and go from there.
Awesome. Maybe kind of to close this off, my obvious question to you is, well, what's next? Lana just ended. How do you kind of think about the next one, and maybe other future things that you're thinking about experimenting with for next year?
Yeah, totally. So we have a big year planned for next year. We're probably going to do 3 big pop-up villages. The one that I can 100% announce is that we'll be back in California in June. We'll do Edge Esmeralda 2025, again working with this new city project. There's a lot of exciting technology to build for this project, so highly recommend folks to check that out. There'll be 2 others that we'll announce before the end of the year. And then we're also thinking about doing what we call like scouting trips, but it's essentially slightly smaller group, maybe 100 people, still pretty sizable, and going to a new place in the world and treating it as a way to start to establish relationships with folks on the ground. So I was just in Bhutan a few weeks ago. That's looking like a pretty likely one that we'll do next year, and there's a lot of exciting things happening there. So that's the plan for next year. And in terms of the bigger vision, I genuinely think that what we're doing is we're creating a new type of environment, like new surface area for experimentation with societal ideas and technology that relates to those. And I think there will be things that will be developed in these environments. Could be Edge City, it could be another pop-up city, but that could only be developed there, right? That couldn't come out of government, couldn't come out of private market or think tanks. It will be formed at an environment like that, and I'm very excited to see what happens there.
This is awesome. I can't wait to come to the next one. So thank you so much for this amazing conversation, and please give him a big round of applause.
Thank you.